Hi guys, Nikhil here. This is the part 9 of our Lightning Web Component series, and today's topic is child component to parent component event communication. So in part 8 we have seen how to communicate from parent to child component. So now in this video we'll learn how to communicate from child component to parent component. Let's move on to our today's agenda. So today first we'll learn what is event. Then we'll see the phases of event in JavaScript. After that, we'll learn how to create and dispatch custom event. Then we'll understand the phases of event in Lightning Web Component. And in last, we'll cover child to parent component event types, and we'll go through 3 types of demos. Let's move on to our first topic. So our first topic is what is event. So HTML events are things that happen to HTML elements when JavaScript is used in HTML pages. JavaScript can react on these events. It's a bit theoretical. Let's try to understand a bit more. So when we write some HTML, it's just give you a markup. It gives you a plain text to interact or to bring some interaction on that element like button or any div. You have to attach some event, and to handle that we'll write some function in the JavaScript. So event can be anything that brings interaction to your HTML elements. So event can be like page shrink, resizing of your page, button click, focus, input blur, closing of window, anything that you play around in your browser, it is an event, and it's a JavaScript event because your browser understand only JavaScript. So Java event is the action that performed by JavaScript that triggers from the HTML or HTML page or a browser. So event has different types of phases. So event has 3 phases. First is capturing phase, second one is target phase, and the third one is bubbling phase. So nowadays in the new browsers, the by default phase is bubbling phase. But if you go back in 90s when the browser started, the by default phase was capturing phase. Let's understand what all these phases are. So first capturing phase. In this event goes down to a element. So suppose we have different hierarchy of our component, like we have parent component A, within that we have parent component B. Component B has many child C, D, E, and E has one more child F. Suppose you click on component A or component F. Suppose you click on component F. So your event will trigger from A to B, B to E, and E to F. This is called capturing phase when your event come from top to bottom to your element. Second one is target phase. In this event reach the target element only. So if I click on component F, so your event will remain in your component F. It will not propagate to E or any other component. Third one is the bubbling phase, in which if I click the event on F, it bubbles up to the till the parent component. So we'll see this in actual demo now. We'll see this in the JavaScript demo. I'll go to my CodePen. In CodePen, we'll try to achieve all these different types of phases and try to understand what it do. I'll I'll write some CSS that is just for better visualization or look and feel, you can say. So first I'll create one div. So So div is my parent. Within that I'll create a form. Form tab is the child of div. Within form I create a div again, and within that div I'll create one p tag. I'll remove this parent div. This I guess this gives us better understanding. So now first I have form. Form has a child div and div has a child p, and we'll attach an event on click to all the element, and we'll give this name func event. First we'll go with the basic one in which we'll pass some text. So first event is on form, and now let me zoom my screen. Yeah, second event is div, and third event is p. So I have created three HTML tags, nested tags, and I have append event handler on click to all of the HTML tags. So first we'll see function. I'm creating a function func that I have defined in HTML. It will receive the data and will console that data. Now we'll first see what is event bubbling. So if I click on p tag, let me add some text as well for better understanding. So this is our nested structure, p within div and div within the form. Each one of them have one event handler. So if I click on p according to event bubbling, so first it will call the function of p, then it will bubble and call the function of div, then it bubble again and call the function of form. So as I already mentioned, by default browsers run as a event bubbling. So if I click p, there is some error, unexpected end of input. So here we have done the mistake. Instead of double quotes it should be single quotes, because the wrapper quotes are double, so we can't give double quotes again and again. So let me clear my console now. Now if I click on p, first it call the function p and print p in my console, then it automatically call the function of div and it print the div in my console, and it after that it call the function of form and print form in my console. So this is called event bubbling, in which the events go up or bubbles up to the parent component or parent function. Now let's see what is target one. In target, if I click on p, it will remain at p. So let's change this thing to event, because each action that we trigger from HTML has event function. And to stop the propagation of an event, there is a function called event.stop propagation. So now this is an example of our target phase, in which if I click on a particular target, it only reach to that target because we have called the function stop propagation, so it will not propagate to the parent. So now if I click p, okay, we'll type dot target because it's a very big object. That's why this console will not able to print it. So now if I click P, you can see P tag only coming. Now if I click div, so it will give me the div target. So it's not propagating. But if I remove this or comment this, it will again become event bubbling phase, in which if I click P, it call all three functions, but takes, because we are printing event, so event triggered by P, all three are printing P. So to convert the event bubbling to a target phase, we use event.stop propagation. Majority of the latest frameworks use internally this method, so you don't need to bother about event bubbling and capturing phase. So now let's go and see the capturing phase that is very rarely used, based hardly actually used in real-time scenario, but it's good to know that. So what we're gonna do is we'll remove the event handler from our all the HTML tags, and now we'll write one for loop. Let element of document dot query selector all. So what we are doing here is we are fetching all the tags that are present in our HTML and going to loop that, and within the loop for each tag or element we're going to attach an event listener. This is the way to attach an event listener from JavaScript. First argument, it will take the type of event. We want a click event. Second argument is a function, so we'll use arrow function, and within that function we'll print console.log element dot tag name. And so by default this event listener is bubbling or like bubble face, but if you pass the third parameter as true, it will convert it into a capturing phase. So now if I click on P, it should first go to the top form. It should print form, then div, and then P. My console spelling is wrong. Yeah, let's try it again quickly. So now I click P and it print form first, div first, and P. So as we know, capturing phase is from top to bottom, bubbling is from bottom to top, and target phase is the current element. So now you know what are all three types of phases of event, and we have seen the demo as well. Let's go and connect how it's useful in Lightning Web Component. So let's go to our third topic, how to create and dispatch a custom event. So this is the syntax to create a custom event. So in custom event, first focus on new custom event. Like this is a constructor that takes parameter. The first parameter is event name, like what should be the event name that you are creating, the custom event you are creating. This, the rest parameters are optional in the object form. By default, bubble property is false, compose property is false, and details property is null. While creating the name, It's always recommend not to use uppercase letter. No spaces should be there. And if you have a bigger name or you want some meaningful name, use underscore to separate the words. Never ever give a name that starts with on, because when we use this event, LWC understand that event with the on keyword. I'll show you like how to call this, then you get to know. And once your event is ready, this is our event, we need to pass it into a method called dispatch event, and that will dispatch our event to our respective location where we want to dispatch it, or to a parent event we can say. Let's understand in more easier way. So this is the syntax that I showed you earlier. So new custom event, event name, this is the default properties. So if I want to create an event called show, so I'll give new custom event show is the event name. Bubbles, if I want to use bubbling phase, I'll give it true. And if I want to compose something, then I will go as a true or false. By default we keep it false, we hardly use compose property. And the third one is detail. If I want to pass some data, I'll assign it to details property. And once my custom event is ready, I'll dispatch that event. To dispatch that event, you need current target dot dispatch event and pass the custom event name. So current target is mostly this, because this is your current component or the reference of the component. That's why we go with this dot dispatch event, and the event that you have created, just pass it. Don't worry about these two property, I'll explain you bubble and compose. So this is how we create the custom event, and we'll see in a demo in a while. Then, as we have seen, three types of phases in JavaScript, but while creating custom events, we have seen there are two properties are there, bubbles and composed. So this is the types of phases that supports by LWC. So bubble is a boolean value that indicate whether the event bubble up through the DOM or not. So as you know now how bubbling works, it propagates the event from child to parent. So if this property is true, it bubbles your event. Default value is false. Similarly, compose is used. Compose indicate whether the event can pass through the shadow boundary. As you know, like in LWC, we have the component that use shadow DOM, and to pass those event through a shadow boundary, we use compose property. But in this tutorial we'll not go deep about compose, because in real time we rarely use, and it's mostly not recommend to use the compose scenario. So likewise we have, if we go with these combination, we have four combination. First is the default combination in which bubbles is false and compose is false. That is the default configuration. The event doesn't bubble up through the DOM and doesn't cross the shadow boundary. The second is bubbles true and composed false, in which the event bubbles through the DOM but it not cross the shadow boundary. The third one is bubbles is true and composed is true. The event bubble through the DOM and cross the shadow boundary and continue bubbling up through the DOM to the document root. And the fourth one is bubbles is false and compose is true. LWC doesn't support this configuration yet. So these are the combination, and this is what it means, what is bubble and what is compose, that we are using in the custom event. Let's go and see the demos of all three types that we have from child to parent components communication using event. So first demo will go through trigger event without data. So let's go to our VS Code, and we'll create first component for simple scenario. Let me zoom it. So let me create a lightning component. Create lightning component. My component name is model parent component. I'll take the default path. Now in meantime we'll create another component, that is model child component. So now our model parent component is ready. So first we'll change the meta configuration file so that our component should be visible to our Lightning app page, record page, as well as home page. I change the is exposed to true and set the targets. And now our child component is also ready. So let's go to our parent HTML, and in which we'll create our basic structure of lightning card that we already have. This, if you have seen my previous video, you know the meaning of these tags till now. And so this is the basic structure. I have created a lightning card. I have given the title simple event, some icon, random icon name, and the class for giving some margin. And here we'll write our code. So first I'll create a button, and I'll use the lightning button only. SLDS hyphen button SLDS button underscore success, and I'll attach one event on click that will call show handler, and I'll say this button name open model and close this button. And we'll go to our JavaScript model parent component. I'll just define this function and leave it as it is. So now I'll go to my child component, that is model child component. Model child component HTML. Oh, go from here only. So now we'll create first child component. Let's create a model over here. So what we are trying to achieve is, from parent component and the child component, we're going to open the model based on the event. So first I'll go and create a div my model. I'll create a class model, and within this model I'll create a class model content. We can go with the SLDS Lightning Design System model as well, but that I'll use when I'll teach you how to create the reusable models. Completely reusable model. This model is also a reusable model. I'll create a strong tag. Within the strong tag we'll receive some header text that I'll pass from parent. Then I'll take a p tag in which I'll take the body of the text that I'll get from parent. I'll pass. Then after that I'll create a footer class text white. I'll add the CSS, and you can get the code in the description link of this video. So button class btn danger, and on click I'll call one handle close handler. This should be inside the tags, and we'll call this button. So this is the structure of a model in which there will be a header, there will be a body, and there will be a close button. And from this close button we'll call the parent component. So let's go to our JS file. So let's define our close handler function. We are expecting parents to pass us header text, pass us body text, and import API decorator from LWC module. And here we'll create our custom event. So now we know how to create the custom event. I'll say this dot dispatch event. This will trigger the or call dispatch the event to parent. And to create the event we'll use constructor custom event, and within this first property is the event name. So I'll define my event name close, rest all properties let it be default. We are not passing any data right now. So whenever I click the close button of my model, this function gets called and it dispatched an event name close. Okay, so this is my child component. Let's go to the parent component, and before that I'll create the child component CSS as well. Model child component dot CSS, and I'll just copy and paste it here. As I already mentioned, you can get this code from my video's description link for the CSS. Now I'll go back to my parent component, and within the parent component let's call the child component C colon model child component. And as we know, the child component is expecting some text from us, so we'll pass some text. This is like parent to child communication that you learned in my previous video. So I'll give some text message, and then it needs body text. I'll pass this model is a child component triggered from parent, and on click of close button it will dispatch an event to parent handler. So this is the body description that I have given. Now there is a event handler as well. So the most important thing that we have to keep in our mind, so always the name that we have given in our custom component should be lowercase, and whenever you use this component, whenever you use this event, always append on in front of that event name. So our event name was close, so I append on in front of it. So LWC automatically understand this is the custom event that is coming from child, and whenever this event gets triggered, we'll say you call model close handler, and I'll define this model close handler also here. Okay, so now right now we have a button that will trigger this model. By default this model is open, so let's hide it. This model initially we'll use if true, then only show this child component model, and we'll assign one property called show model that will initialize it as false. So whenever the button show handler will trigger, we'll change this property to true, and whenever the close button gets called, we'll change this property to false back. So let's understand again like what we are doing here. So first we have created a parent component in which we have a button. On click of that button, we'll change the show model property to true, by which our child components get loaded, which is nothing, it's a pop-up model. So that comes on the screen. On the child model, we have a close button, and on click of that button, we are dispatching a custom event named close. So whenever this event gets triggered, it comes to the parent and sees is anywhere attached to any element. If yes, it calls the respective event handler, and that event handler closes the model. So let's push this to our org. First always child and then parent. Now our component is deployed. Let's go to the org. So my org is already open. I already create a new tab. Let's go and edit the page. It will take us to the app builder. Let me zoom it a little bit. So now our component name is model parent component. We'll drag this component to our main area. Save this, go back. So now you can see that this open model button is in parent component. As I click on this button, it loads the child component, and this close button is in child component. As I click on the close, it call the custom event close, and that close this model. So this close will trigger back to the parent method that was attached to the custom on close event, and it closed the model. So this is the basic event or the simple event that we'll just use to trigger any method in the parent component. So in this scenario, we are not passing any data now. So let's move on to our next demo, that is trigger event with data. So let's go back to our VS Code. So let's close all, and we'll create two new components, and this time our component name is navbar parent component, and the another component name is navbar child component. So my parent component is ready. So always the first thing that I'll do, go to the meta file or configuration file, expose this parent component to true, and set the targets to all the pages. It's not recommend to set all the targets, but I prefer for this demo purpose mainly. It's based on your requirement whether you want this component to be visible in all pages or not. And let's go to our HTML now, and in HTML we'll take the same template for our card, and so we have created the lightning card with heading event with data. So we are creating some pretty interesting component this time. Let's start writing it. So I'll give some heading, select your favorite applicator in child component and see details in parent component. Okay, so I'll create a div, give the class flex, and I'll define one p tag that say I'm parent component, and below that we'll call here child component soon, and we'll create a card here that will that gets visible when we trigger an event from the child component. So we'll create a card, and within this card we have div that it will show us an image, and any source will be there. Style I'll give inline this time. There should be an in the card we need an image, we need some text. So text is player name, and here I'll just copy paste it a couple of times. So I need player name, its ranking, the country name or rating. We'll bind the data soon. And if I go to my JS file of the parent component, I'll just write the code in my child component. Let me go to my parent and paste it here. I hope the meta file is correct. Yeah. So let's go to the parent component JavaScript file. We have something JSON or data is already ready, so I'll just copy paste it as it is, and I'll say this property navlist. So navlist is an array of an object in which I have ID, name, URL, country, rating, position, and a property selected false. And in HTML, we are going to bind these properties here in the card. So before that, we'll create our child component, and child component is pretty small. We'll say I am child component, and within this we'll create first div class vertical menu, and within this we'll loop something for each the data that will pass from parent. That will be nav list that will come from parent, and each item is list. That's the alias for the current element within the loop, and within this we'll create one a tag. I'll define href javascript. If you don't want the default action of a tag, you can use this property void 0, so it will not navigate anywhere. I have class that will come from my parent. Apart from that, I have name list dot name. Apart from that, there is key is very important, and we'll attach one click handler. I'll give this name nav selection, handler nav selection, and we'll go with this dot name will print in this. A separated list of classes for that classes allows CSS, and a tag closing is missing, and I'll close this a tag. So our component is expecting this nav list from parent. So let's import the API decorator, and parent will pass some list. That list gets rendered to our HTML. We are looping the data and using class name from the list, name, ID, and everything. And on click of that particular list, we have to pass the data that is selected by the user. So we'll go with event and we'll say const select event equal to new. We are creating now custom event, and I am giving the event name selection, and there is a property called detail. If you want to pass the data, data should assign to this property always. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the name of the target. So whenever the user clicks on a tag, whatever the name sets to this a tag comes to event.target.name, and I'll dispatch this event. So we'll dispatch this event that we have created now. So the event name is select event, the instance that we have created for this. So the select event we are dispatching now. Select event is nothing. The new event that we have created, we have assigned to select event, and our event name is selection. So I'll repeat what I have done here is in the child component, I'll receive nav list, and the nav list I'll render in my HTML, and I have attached an event handler called handler nav selection. So for each click on the A tag, this method gets triggered and I'll get the event.target.name. So I'll dispatch that name to the parent, and parent will listen to the selection event, and based on that it will do some manipulation. Okay, so our child component is ready. Let's go to the parent component back, and before that I'll create the child component CSS nav component dot CSS. So our CSS is ready now. I'll go to the parent component. In parent component, my array is already there within the nav list. So this nav list we want to pass to the child. So let's call the child component here C colon nav our child component, and within this component we have to pass nav list, that is nothing, that's nav list, and we have a listener called selection. So we need to append on to the event name, the custom event name. So we have now on selection. Whenever any event dispatch from the child, call selected nav handler, and we'll go here, we'll create a selected nav handler. I'll create one property called selected player and initialize it with null, you can say, or you can give false. We'll go with null only because we'll take the value in it which is passed by the child, and we'll say show my component or the card whenever this selected player is there. So if it's null in JavaScript, it's false. So we'll wrap our card for this property within the template. So what we are trying to achieve here is, if none of the player is selected, my card should be hidden. Otherwise, if player is selected, the card should be visible. So when the person will pass the child component dispatch an event, I'll receive an event. From this event, I need to fetch the data, that is player name. So to fetch the data, we need to use event.detail. That was the property on which we were setting the data. And I'll say this dot data, and I'll say this dot selected player, that was the property that we have created here, equal to this dot nav list, that is a actual array. We'll go through this and find item, in which item dot name equal to player name. So what we are trying to achieve here is, when the child component dispatch an event, and it will pass the name that he has clicked. So we'll extract that detail or the name into a variable called player name, and using that name we'll go to the actual array and find which name match and give me the actual the selected array. So suppose if the child click Virat Kohli, I'll get this detail. If I clicked Steve Smith, I'll get this detail, because child component will pass me the name, and within the find I'll compare the name and I'll get this record. So selected nav handler give me an array with the name that is passed by the child. So once this property is there, I'll bind my HTML card property. So here it will be selected player dot image URL, and likewise we'll go to all properties. So here it should be name, selected player dot name, selected player position, country, rating. Now our card is also ready, and I'll just create the CSS file for the parent. I'll paste the CSS file. Now let's understand what we are doing, or what we are trying to achieve here is. So let's go to the parent component first. So in parent component, I have included a child component, and below that I have the card in which I'm showing the selected player description that will be only visible when there is a selected player, and by default it's false. And to the child component I am passing the nav list, and we have a handler which gets called when the child trigger an event name selection. So in the child component, we'll get the list of data or list of player. We'll loop that list of player in our HTML template, and in template we have a handler. When you click on a particular player, it will trigger an event and it dispatch with the name that he has clicked to the parent component. Once the parent component get the name, it will go to actual array or list of players and find which name match with the name that is passed by the child component and set that value to the selected player. As the value set to the selected player, our card component become visible and it rendered the details. So let's push this component to our org. First child, then parent. And this is one of the most commonly used way in parent or child to parent communication. So now our component is deployed. Let's go to our org. Let's edit the page. Let's look for our component name. Nav bar parent component. Let's drag to the canvas area. We can move it to the bigger area. It's a pretty big component. Now save it. Let's go back to the page. Now our component, so this is the black line is our parent component and this list is our child component. So parent pass the list and list is rendered by the child component. So whenever I click on any of the name, that name will get passed to the parent component and parent component filter that name from the actual list and get the data and show the card. So if I click Virat Kohli, so it's load the data in the child in the parent component. I guess we missed the one div, that's why it's coming out. But you can see now, like if I click Steve Smith, it takes the data of Steve Smith. If I click Keynes William, it takes the data of Keynes William. If I click Joy Root, it takes the data of Joy Root. This is how our child to parent communication works with data, how to pass the data. I'll go to my parent component, HTML, and we have defined flags, we have defined div, child component is fine. We have our card component, we have a card. Within the card we should have our div here, we missed actually, and Within this I can say class container. Now we have one this and one parent card. Yeah. So that there was some CSS issue. Let's deploy it quickly. So now component is deployed. Let's see. So now if I click on Virat Kohli, now it's aligned properly. You can see Steve Smith, Kane Williamson, Joy Root, David Warner. So now child to parent, we are passing data and we are rendering the card based on that. Let's go to our third type that is very rarely used, and I never used or never come across this scenario in my last 3 or 4 projects of Lightning Web Component. That is trigger event with bubbling. Let's go to our VS Code and let's create 2 component. Okay, so we'll create first Lightning component notify parent component, and the another one I'll take child component. Same default path. So my parent component is ready. As usual, first thing, expose your component and set the targets. And for parent we add some CSS as well. So we'll create CSS. We'll add that CSS file to our parent component, and we'll go to our child component as well. And in child component also we'll add some CSS. You'll get all these CSS in my video description. I already told you guys. So let's start building this. So we'll start this time from the child component. So let's create a div with class child section, and within the child section we'll create a notification box. And within that I'll say some text. Notification in child component event bubble till parent element in same component, and below this we'll create one event handler with button class button, and the event handler name on click show notify parent handler, and we'll give the text click me to send notification to parent component using event bubbling. So we have created a button and attached an event handler. So when I click on this, it start bubbling, and to make sure it's bubbling, we'll attach one event handler to our parent element in the same component. So we know like how bubbling works now. So if the child element trigger one event, it will call the parent event and then navigate till to the root. So what we are doing here is we have created two event handler, and if I click the button, it will call this handler as well within the same component. Let's create the methods. So I have show notify parent handler, and another one is child handler. So within this, I'll create a custom event. Select event equal to new custom event, and I'll give this name show, and we'll pass a property bubbles to true. So it tell this custom event like you are eligible to bubble, and we'll dispatch this event, this dot dispatch event, and select event. And once this event start bubbling, it will trigger this child handler as well. And for this child handler, what we gonna do is we'll say show child notification that is false initially, and we'll make it true on click of this. So whenever this component become visible, we'll show this notification box. We'll hide this unload, and we'll put this notification box inside this. So now our child component is ready. So once this button gets clicked, it calls this method, and it will go to the parent as well. Let's write some code for parent as well. So in parent component, we'll go to HTML, create the card, and within this card, we're going to create a div class parent section, and on show handler. So I have created a method, or I have used a child custom event to a div that gets called whenever the child dispatch an event. And within this, I'll say I'm a parent component, and below this I'll create a box, again notification box, and this span notification from child event bubble successfully, and will show this only when some property is true. So we'll say this property name show notification, and we'll cut and paste inside this template tag. So let's create this property. By default this property is false, so it means the notification in parent as well it will be hidden, and we already have created a show handler. We'll say this dot show notification equal to true, and let's import our child component. So our child component is c dot notify child component. Now the thing to observe over here is I have created a div, and within that I'm calling the child component, but I haven't added any event listener or any event handler over here. So this whenever this component, the child component, triggers an event from the child or the event bubbles, it will bubble to the parent elements where I have attached another handler with the same name on show, and it trigger that event as well. So let's deploy this and see if things are working fine as expected. I'll explain you once again this component how it's working. So let's deploy first. Something got failed. Child is passed. Let's deploy parent again. Yeah, so in meantime I'll explain now again. So in the child component we have created a notification box that is wrapped by conditional statement if true. So by default this show child notification is false, so this notification will be hidden. We have created a button. Within the button, outside the button we have a div element on which also we have created an event handler. So when you click a button, it dispatch an event. That event bubbles because we set the property bubbles true. So when it start bubbling, it calls the another method, that is to the parent element child handler, and the child handler change the show child notification to true, and in our HTML we'll able to see this. The bubble will not stop, bubbling of event will not stop within the same component, it will bubble to the parent component. So once it reach here, it will see do I have any component or any handler. No, it will bubble again, go to the parent element. Here it will see any element is any event handler is there. If yes, it calls the show handler, and the show handler gets called and set the show notification true, and this show notification here comes to HTML and it show the notification box in the parent element. So let me go to the org, edit the page. Let's search for our element name, that is notify parent. It's here. Let's drag it to left section. Save this. Let's go back. So now our component is ready. So under the red one, we have this button, click me to send notification to parent component using event bubbling. So as soon as I click here, one notification box should come under the red, under the child area, and one notification should come under the black one, that is a parent component. So now you can see that as I click on this button, it bubbles, it calls the another handler that was showing the child notification box. Once it's done, it's further bubble to the parent component, and it see if any handler is on the way. If yes, it trigger that event and it shows the notification box for the for the parent component. So this is how this event bubbling works, but it's not the recommended way. The two recommended way is the simple event and the event with the data. So by these two scenarios, you can achieve anything in child to parent combination 99%. And let's go back to our slide, and we have covered what is event today. Then we have seen the phases of event, the bubble phase, target phase, and compose phase. Um, and after that, we have seen how to create and dispatch the custom event. And then after that, we have seen the phases that supported in LWC, that is bubble and compose. Compose is not at all recommended, and we never touched it, and I don't even have any example to showcase that. And after that, we have gone through the three types of child to parent communication using events. And first one was without data, that was a simple event. After that, we have seen trigger event with the data, and the last one was with the trigger event with bubbling. And that's for today. If you have any query or any doubt, you can ask me anytime in the YouTube video comment box. You can ask any question. Apart from that, for the all code that I have used, all links that I have used, all CSS, you can get that from the link that I have added for my code in the video description. You can get that code from there. And please like, share, or subscribe if you like my work. And thank you. Have a great day.